Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com. Thanks for joining us in another one of our interview series. I'm thrilled to have you with us and hope you enjoy the discussion today. But if you love the double bass as much as we do, please go and check out our website. We've got a series of lessons and courses and interviews to help you move your playing further forward, and we'd love you to be part of our community. Now, today's guest artist, originally hailing from the USSR, has been on the New York jazz scene for over 30 years, playing with some renowned artists as a sideman, such as Michael Brecker, Eddie Palmieri, Jeff Watts, to name but a few. And they're particularly known for their work with the Mingus Big Band, which furthers and keeps the musical flame of the wonderful late great Charles Mingus burning as well. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Discover Double Bass, it's Boris Kozlov. Boris, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me here today in Leeds.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here. An honor.
Well, I have been geeking out on your music for many years, but particularly for the last few weeks while I've been preparing for this interview, and it is a joy to hear you play. I love what you do, and I'm really excited about checking out your concert with the Mingus Dynasty Band this evening. But just for us to get started, maybe you could tell people at home a bit about what you do and your work as a musician. Where are you at the minute? What kind of jobs and gigs are you doing?
Well, right now we're on tour with the Mingus situation, which is, it's harder to come by to get a good tour now because when I joined the band in 1998, everything was different. The scene was different. So Mingus was around. She was looking for good things, good gigs and festivals like a shark. And we would basically every weekend travel somewhere. And 3-4 times a year we would go to Europe, and of course Ronnie Scott's would be part of that. And about once a year we would go to Asia, and we had weekly residency at the Fez when we started. So things have changed a lot, the economics changed, so this was kind of special for us that we were able to play 6 days at Ronnie Scott. And now we're here with the septet, which was kind of like the original.
So you were busy on the New York scene, and when you arrived in, I think it was 1991. So
91, yes.
Wow. I mean, what was it like then when you for the folks that don't know, you were brought up in the USSR, so you'd been playing there and, thriving on that scene. And then what was your experience of arriving in New York at that time? I mean, there's so much great music happening in the 90s in New York. Do you remember how that felt and what you did when you got there?
Yeah, I remember. First of all, I was lucky to I had a chance to experience what New York was like for a few months before I made the decision to come, because the times were very interesting. The world was opening up for Soviets, and there was a great interest in Soviet people from the West. We were I was with a studio band, which used to be the only government label called Melodia. All the records went through, even licensed ones went through the label. The house band I was part of was bought by a restaurateur in Long Island to play for swing dances for 5 months. So I basically spent all my time and money going to see and meet Joy Henderson, Rufus Reed, and people like that.
Wow.
And buy myself a Fender bass because I didn't have one.
Yeah.
And the decision to move came shortly after. And the main reason for that was not even any kind of ambition, or even though it was very interesting to see how I would do in that environment. The decision was really more like I wanted to further myself. I wanted to improve. And at that time, I didn't know what to do next. Honestly, I had calls, I could function, I was functional bass player, but I didn't know how to move further, how to get to the next step.
So who did you go and see? You mentioned Rufus, the great Rufus Reed. Did you hunt out other bass players at the time? I'm thinking of people that were on the New York scene then. Michael Moore, Ray Brown would have been alive at that time. I mean,
Ray Brown was sort of instrumental in encouraging me.
Oh, wow.
Of coming to New York because he came with Marlboro Super Band and played in Moscow. And I was still the student getting my master's at the Gnesin Academy. They played a concert, and the band was just full of superstars, like amazing. Herb Ellis played guitar, Jeff Hamilton on drums, amazing. Quite in Soviet style, the Union of Composers decided to organize a jam session. It's kind of like, oh, here's the program. You guys cannot stay in the hotel. You have to come.
Oh, right, okay.
And they organized a few players, including my teacher, Anatol Sobolev, who is, I still consider him one of the best ever living in Europe. Matter of fact, Benny Golson used to come to Russia and play with him. He called them Russian Paul Chambers.
Oh, wow, what a lovely thing to say.
So he brought the bass, and I thought that he would be playing, and I don't know what happened. I think maybe because Ray Brown was his hero. And Ray Brown, Johnny Coles, and all the older guys, they just sit in the front row, and all the younger guys, like Michael Mossman and Gary Smulyan, they ran up to play. I remember meeting them for the first time, running up the stairs.
Wow.
And my teacher said, why don't you play? He brought the bass and said, you play. I still don't know if he got too worried playing in front of Ray Brown, or he wanted me to play to kind of like showcase. I still don't know. But matter of fact, I played in front of Ray Brown. I was not worried somehow. I don't know why. For 2 hours. Next day, he's doing a clinic at my college, and it's full of people. That big room was swarmed. Even classical musicians came out. So we listened to his master class. Came out to the corridor. Again, it's a crowd of people, as if he was a president of a small country. You know, he comes out. Somehow sees me, comes to me and says, sound really good, you should come to New York.
Wow.
That's all he said. Shook my hand, and it was just a reinforcement, you know.
So did you get to see him perform and reconnect to them in New York when you got there? And
I did see him play with a trio, with Benny Green at the time. And then later on I saw him on the road. Actually, we opened for him in Weiden, Germany at the festival. And that was the last year he was alive. And it was still amazing. He would finish the gig and would not let anybody touch the bass or the case. Very slowly he would get the case himself, put the bass in, close it up, and slowly wheel it. Same, I saw Mstislav Rostropovich at the airport in Moscow some 20 years ago. Same thing. He was pushing the white cello case on 4 wheels in front of himself. Two assistants would be walking with him. He wouldn't let anybody touch that cello.
Fascinating.
Wheeled it right on the plane.
Yeah. Well, I guess his cello was probably quite a valuable instrument as well.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And another person I believe you might come into contact is Leroy Vinnegar.
At the time, I know that he lived in Europe for a while. And I was even lucky to have a Yugoslavian reprint of his quartet recording with Harold Land. And at the time when I met him in the 90s, he was teaching in Portland, in Oregon. So he came to just play a couple of local gigs and I think see the family in New York. And he happened to walk into this small club called St. Mark's Bar. And I didn't even know who he was because I didn't know what he looked like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he decided to come over, and he told me a very interesting thing, which I didn't know at the time how to take it, because you can take it both ways. But what he told me exactly, he said, I heard you, son. If you don't mind I tell you 2 things. If you stay in New York your whole life, and if you don't mind being poor, you might have a chance at becoming a master.
So is this good advice for anyone moving to New York, I think?
But you might have a chance, you might not have a chance. I heard some funny stuff from, at that time I started playing a lot gigs, and we played on the street too with one of his, I guess students, maybe informal, but he played in his groups, Jay Collins, great saxophone player. He was from Portland, and he told me a little bit about Leroy, and he said that he would always get decent gigs around Portland, a couple of $100 a man, hire a quintet of students to play with him, and instruct them by saying that you can do whatever you want on a solo. You can stand on your head, anything. But the melody, you make one mistake, 25 off. And I guess students learn by, owing him money after the gig.
Motivation.
Yeah.
There. So around this time, you worked with some incredible artists. I've seen your discography and your biography, and Michael Brecker is one of them. And I just wonder if you could speak about that experience. I believe it was around the time, I think Chris Mondoki was maybe playing with him, and you were also doing some dates. And I mean, what a force of nature Michael Brecker was, and maybe you could speak on your experience of meeting and playing with him.
Yeah, he was absolutely incredible. First I met him at the record date, this group called Beatle Jazz, which is organized by the drummer Brian Melvin, who was last guy to play with Jaco, those trios.
Oh, wow.
That's him. And David Kikoski, my good friend and incredible pianist. We have a dual record now, thanks to the pandemic.
Yeah, okay.
on half note. And the Beatle Jazz traditionally at that time had guests. So the guests on that recording, I think, were Richard Bona singing and playing, Mike Stern, John Scofield, and Michael Brecker. And
wow.
It felt to me to play those songs with Mike Stern, who played acoustic guitar amazingly. Like,
really?
You've never seen him play acoustic guitar.
I've only ever heard him.
He played Sadowski acoustic, just amazing. And Michael Brecker, he played one song, and after we played and listened to in the control room, he said like, "Oh man, I heard about you. Tain told me about you." And of course, Tain I knew, Jeff Tain Watts, the great drummer, I knew because of David Kikoski, whom I met in the Mingus Band. So a lot of things just go back to when you join the Mingus Band, all of a sudden you're in a spotlight for more people than you thought was possible. So through Dave Kikoski, I met Tain, and then eventually Michael Brecker. Then they recorded Quindictet, White Angles, which is amazing, amazing recording. John Patitucci played on the recording. The next step for the Quindictet was the gig at Iridium for a weekly engagement, where John was too busy, couldn't do it. I think he was busy with Wayne Shorter maybe. So Larry came and did that week.
How long are you going to do?
Yeah, and then they got more stuff for 2004 with the Quindictet. And Larry was too busy with Meltdown and everybody else. So somehow, because Michael remembered me through Tain introduction and Beatle Jazz recording, and Gil Goldstein, who was writing all the charts and producing the recording, he already knew me from previous Mingus situations. They asked me to come for the tour in Japan, which was the first thing.
Wow.
And Chris Mondoki was playing in the quartet at that time.
Ah, okay.
That was his gig officially. And to fast forward, I wound up playing with the quartet a little bit too, because Chris had a baby.
Yeah.
And they had some gigs, including that it's a big deal gig. It's a Central Park concert, open air. And I already knew everybody in the band. Like Joey was like really kind to me, and Tain was in the band, so it was cool. But that was not my gig. I was a sub there. But the other two bands, I felt like I planted my feet in it. It was the Quindictet, and the material expanded because Gil kept writing. Some of those tunes from the first Michael's recording, Michael Brecker, that I had on the copy of a tape and listened to every day in my Moscow apartment, like Syzygy. Gil wrote that out, and we were playing it with a large group. To Japan went the original Quindictet. To Europe, we went in a sextet configuration. Okay. Just Alex Epegin on trumpet, Gil Goldstein, conductor and keyboards, Adam Rogers on guitar, Michael Brecker, myself, and Clarence Penn on drums. And we were picking up the rest of the musicians in various countries. So there was a lot of rehearsing, a lot of time spent like putting it all up. We had to do filler gigs in between, which were sextets. So that became kind of like its own entity in both Japan and Europe. So I felt like I started feeling like I belonged there too. And of course, Michael was an incredible, I mean, first of all, you have to pinch yourself, like I'm playing behind this guy. But then just his time, his discipline, his warmness and kindness, and diligence. You know, in that there was a lesson every day. Like you would take 2 flights, come to the hotel, everybody would go to lunch, maybe, or if it's summertime, like sit outside with a beer, you know, before the sound check. He would go to the room and shed Evie.
Right.
And he was shedding Evie just not to worry people with the saxophone.
Because it's an electric instrument, so you don't hear that.
Yeah. And that was his normal routine.
Right.
Like he would come to the hotel and first thing he would go and shed. And sometimes after the gig too, he would just come back in the room, turn the computer on, take that Evie prototype and
Wow.
and go. Yeah, constantly in the music, you know.
It's amazing thinking of this time. And if you had some advice for somebody who gets to play with their heroes or step up onto a stage that they're maybe nervous about, do you have any kind of words of encouragement for somebody who's thinking about taking that leap or gets that opportunity?
Well, you know, like they say, you know, the techniques to calm yourself down, and, you know, breathing is one of them, but also I have to say I had been nervous a few times in my life, but not that much, because basically once you know what you're doing, like do the right thing and be what it be, you know. I forgot what the right saying was. And, you know, we bass players, we're lucky in a way that maybe we more in demand than, say, like horn players, in a way of playing creative music daily. So you work out a lot of things that kind of reassure your approach. And then maybe it's my personal thing, or maybe the fact that I've been to Soviet Army for 2 years. Like after that, anything, you know, nothing scares you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I always took the approach to it, kind of like, okay, if I'm gonna be nervous, it's gonna take away 30% of what I'm trying to do. So why not concentrate? Because there are gonna be other things that's gonna take away. They're gonna be different bass, everyday different bass. They're gonna be maybe jet lag. They're gonna be like strings I don't like. So all those things are already gonna detract from what I'm trying to do. So somehow that nervousness, it was not entering. But I did experience extreme happiness. And in the case of Michael Brecker, once in a while, like he would play that famous version of Naima solo in the middle of the set. And almost every night after that, we would be just standing like, why are we playing after that?
Yeah.
Like this is just...
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, was there anything that you can think back that you were practicing that helped you move your playing forward at that time, or maybe something that you would recommend, you know, students of jazz bass really focus their time on? I mean, I know that's a very broad question, but I just wonder if anything comes to mind.
No, I actually have. I'm glad you asked this, because I do teach now more than before, and including summer camps and stuff like that. And I have a few private students, and I know exactly what to tell people because I see that it works. First of all, I was subjected to Simondl, especially first book, and I'm a strong believer in that. And I apply his configuration of how he played scales to working on any scale, because he basically, you know, you do that first, and then you play the arpeggio, right? And then you play the arpeggio of the fourth step, which is C. So I apply that same simple method to every scale. So if I'm working on whatever it is, like, you know, altered scale, I do the same thing. I do this, and then I do the arpeggio, which is diminished. And then I do the arpeggio for imagined fourth step of the scale, which would be, now it becomes augmented. So that is kind of like a formulaic approach, but it helps.
And you're going around the cycle of fifths as you're doing this? Is that what you're doing?
Whatever the scale I take that I'm working on, I'm also always recommending to pick your battles. Like just the other day, we were doing a clinic in London, And I was making suggestions for guitarists and bassists, and I was saying, look, you don't need to give yourself 30 techniques to learn or 30 versions of something, because you're going to drown in it and you're not going to learn anything from it. Give yourself 5 and work on it. That's my approach for what I do too, and what I did when I was young. And I was lucky to already have been playing electric bass at the time, so I knew basics of it. So my upright, basically my teacher showed me how to hold the bass. Also with a picture in the model book, he was classically trained, and like, you put this part right here, and like you slightly on the right foot and so forth. So between that and the day when he sent me as a sub to the gig he didn't want to do was exactly a year. So I thought that Simondl was instrumental in that. And later on, I found out that especially the arpeggio parts, they're so important because oftentimes we kind of like stuck in one place. Playing arpeggios, it opens you up, and you see in Larry Granier, in Dave Holland, and in Ron Carter Buster, and John Patitucci, they know their arpeggios, so you free yourself up because it's a very like geography, infused instrument. Like you have to move this to like saxophone player can just stand there and play 2.5 octaves.
And they're playing their own instrument as well.
And they're playing their own instrument. We have to, like, one of the ways to be creative is to expand your range, basically. So I say practice arpeggios. One of my students, it was his idea, but I thought it was really good. He says, I take a piece that I have to learn, and I play all the arpeggios of the piece. For example, if we're talking about, for the sake of simplicity, not simplicity, but familiarity, say like if we're working on Autumn Leaves, right? You play all the arpeggios. I only suggested to him that you do it in particular way with a metronome, so you're accomplishing few tasks at the same time. If you already know your notes, how to play, because that's my thing, there's never enough time to do anything, and then there are other things in life than playing bass or writing or flying on the airplane, family, friends, whatnot. So combine the tasks, like make it rhythmically challenging for yourself. Not to the point, again, when you drown, but to the point when it's hard enough that you can be learning something.
So it's efficiency in choosing your battles.
And choosing battles too, yeah. So if you practice all the arpeggios on Autumn Leaves, make it something like, okay, an exercise I stole from my friend, great saxophonist, John Ellis. He says, well, the basic of everything we do is predominantly like triplets. So why don't you take triplet and do something different from it? For example, skip the first note of the triplet, so it becomes like ba, 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 ba. Play arpeggio like that. So first note, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next one. Next one. So that's an example. So when I practice and I feel like that saves me time and that helps me, I combine tasks. For example, I have to confess, these days I don't get to practice a lot, like on my own stuff, maybe at the sound check, when I do have to get the new bass together, Or if I'm home, it's usually projects. It's usually somebody's music. So when I'm learning somebody's music, if the lines to learn, of course I do it, and I do it with a metronome, and I do it with a metronome again. If I'm comfortable, set it on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's your metronome. And of course it's mathematical, but it teaches me for sure, the certain level of control of time, which is somewhat instrumental in leading to feeling how to control the overall movement with the cymbal and the drummer and how to plug into it, it's conducive to that. It's not going to teach you that, but it's conducive to that. So I do this kind of things, and if I'm learning a project, I would do a funny thing with the metronome, and then I would, if I don't have a chance to play my bow, which I kind of force upon myself all the time just to keep it going, I would play the part that the person wrote for the song with a bow, even if it's just like walking bass line.
So
like,
yeah.
Like, I would do it with the bow, also with a metronome. And, in a situation like the, Mingus situation, sometimes I get to play a solo, or sometimes I don't even care. Different set of tasks at hand. But there are always parts with the bow. And like yesterday, I didn't have one. And it was obvious that it was missing. I had to do all kind of things. So I do that. And if I'm in a situation when it's a trio gig or quartet gig, and people always do this, like, you got it. I typically choose at least one tune where I would solo with a bow. I think it gives a different color to the whole band performance, and also it forces me to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And
so the bow is an important part of the journey for you in terms of like your technique and your musicality and.
Yep. And of course, the stigma. People always trying to put you in the box. People hear you play a decent and more or less in tune solo with a bow, and they're like, "Oh, you're one of those Eastern European classically trained bassists." And nope, I have a diploma in electric bass. But of course I practice it, and I was on the road with the Manhattan Transfer for a long time. They retired, but it was a beautiful gig in the sense that, first of all, if I had something else, Mingus gig, my own gig, just tell them ahead of time you're not doing it, and no questions asked. You're still going to be the first call. And with them, because it's 4 singers, and then at one point we were doing shows together. They call it the Summit with Take 6.
Great.
So 10 people, and Take 6 is an a cappella group, but we got to play with them. It's pretty amazing experience. So it's a long sound check, and of course, then there's a long dinner time and everything. And I started thinking, like, man, I can use that time to learn the Battesini concerto, which I always wanted to learn. So I started bringing -1, plugging it into my GK.
Yeah. Like Michael Brecker, finding that time to get that practice.
Yep. And I think that helped with the bow a little more,
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. I've enjoyed hearing that in your music, and just a few things I just wanted to touch on. We covered quite a lot, but one of them was you mentioned to me that you're always using the bass de jure, the borrowed bass, and this instrument is my bass, and
it's beautiful.
Oh, glad you like it. You sound wonderful on it, Boris.
Thank you. It's the best bass I came across in Europe this time.
Yes. I'm delighted to hear that. How do you get comfortable with a new instrument? Is that something, because if you're not, using your instrument at all when you tour, then you're just, what happens when you first get to grips with it? You just running is it back to the samandal,
Not quite. It really depends on the time. But I do have a routine about it. First of all, I look at it and, I kind of like, people call it parameters, I call it perimeters. To me, in my head, it's more like a cow walking inside the perimeter.
Okay.
Like, what can I do and what can I cannot do, which I won't even try. Be it musical idea, or be it like connecting it to physical. Then I take a bow, first thing, I take a bow and I do the exercise which I stole from Mark Johnson. Who's incredible bass player, beautiful guy, and I stole it from him. I think he was maybe he was in the early 90s in the Bass Player magazine. But basically, you take a fifth. Again, it's with a bow and with a metronome. So metronome speeds things up. when it comes to warming up, and so you take a fifth, for example, like B and F sharp, right? And you tune it with a bow, fifth, minor third, major third, back to fifth. And I do a few of those like randomly, and of course it's easier here. But when it comes to here, it starts being a little hairy, longer with the metronome. So that's my first line of defense. Next thing I would do if I'm pressed on time, like Simandl would work whatever currently I'm working on, and like don't tell me you would know all the scales and chords. That's impossible. Or something maybe I picked out of Slanimsky book. Whatever I'm working on, I would try playing that and see how well it works on the bass. I saw Lucas Curtis, who's my good friend and one of my favorites,
incredible Latin American music, and plays with some wonderful artists. And
plays with his brother, like Curtis brothers.
Yeah.
His brother, Zakai, is a wonderful pianist. So I saw them play a few times. I mean, I saw him play a bunch. I subbed for him with Palmieri's Salsa Orchestra.
Wow.
But I remember seeing him at Dizzy. I finished the first part, and he comes in to play Curtis Brothers. And I see he takes the bass out, and he just plays very rhythmic, fast, bunch of 8 notes. But I never asked him about, because I knew what he's doing. He's just getting the motion together. So he just like takes the bass out, looks how everything works, and he just goes like. It's almost like stream of consciousness, but he quickly gets his, inner motion of that 8-note motion and both hands together. And I thought, like, man, this is completely illogical, but so smart at the same time.
Yeah.
So I started kind of like doing a similar thing, and sometimes I would do the opposite. I would be like, you know what? Let me play something that's easy, like the solo record that we talked about earlier. I did over a few years, just.
This is double
standard on my own. The first track on that, which I think inspired by Stanley Clarke, and it's called Kowloon Bass Check. Kowloon is part of Hong Kong City, and we flew there on 2 long flights with a Mingus Band, with a Mingus Bass and Cheney case. And before I do anything, before I could go to sleep, I wanted to make sure the bass is cool. So I brought the whole thing in my room. I opened it up, and I started playing. And that night, I'm like, you know what? I think I have a piece here. And I put my Neumann up and just recorded it. And I called it Kowloon Bass Check.
You recorded it on the Mingus Bass?
The whole record is on the Mingus.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Wow.
And what I did was, just wanted to check the bass, and I played the simple thing is of E minor, like E minor and A minor pentatonic. So the pieces, I'll just play you the head. It's been a long time and I never played it live, but that type of thing, it's the opposite of doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I know the bass, I just need to make sure it's okay. So I play simplest. Like, what can be simpler than a bunch of open strings and harmonics,
Yeah. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, we've just brought Charles Mingus into the discussion there with talk about his bass, which by coincidence happens to have a photo of him, which is an unusual thing. But you were talking about playing his. Maybe we start with the instrument. I mean, this beautiful bass, you said to me, was in your apartment for how many years?
12 years.
12 years. I mean, the legendary, Ernst Roth double bass that's so synonymous with, with Charles Mingus. Let's just start on the instrument. I mean, how is it to play?
It was very comfortable. It's actually smaller than this.
Smaller than this?
It's smaller than this.
Wow, okay.
It made me want, until now, a smaller bass.
Okay.
In Mingus's hand, it was a mandolin, basically. It's a very narrow neck. So I actually asked on my present bass, which I acquired in England, I asked to narrow strings to the size of that bass.
Okay.
Which, Bill Merchant did. So, and the neck is even thinner than this.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, really comfortable. It just sits in your hand.
Maybe because he was a giant in so many ways. I expected the bass to be this, yeah.
And you can see him playing this bass throughout, I think already in the 50s he had it.
Yeah.
Because it's from 1927.
Yeah.
And nobody knew the way how this bass made it into Mingus's hands. Nobody knew that story. Sue was trying to think about it, and she was asking people around, and his childhood friend, Britt Woodman, the great trombonist, who was still in the big band when I joined. And he could remember, he thought that maybe somebody gifted that bass to him. Because at the time it was not considered to be like, old Italian masterpiece or anything.
Yeah.
It was just like working bass. David Perot, whom I mentioned, we were talking about basses, wonderful luthier, yeah. We were talking at Zinc recently, and he said something interesting. He said, in the time of Mingus youth, or young years, those German instruments were like Chinese now for us. They were, just workhorse.
Yeah.
They were everywhere.
Oh, it's an incredible bass. And in terms of the setup, did you, maybe you could speak a bit about gut strings and steel strings, because I happen to know that you tend to favour, is it Tomastic Spiracore? Or maybe, actually I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you typically play, and what did Charles Mingus typically play, and what's on the instrument at the moment on the Ernst Roth?
Mingus played, obviously, guts until medals became available.
Oh, did he play them at the end of his career, towards the end? Yeah.
And same story, even though, the band was organized and run by Sue Mingus until she could. And she would, of course, not mess with a lot of musical things. She would be like, oh, it's up to you. But a lot of things she would be very insistent on advising. So, play as acoustic as you can, don't use too many monitors. And she used to quote Charles saying like, oh, when you play with the electricity plays you. Apparently that's what Mingus said.
Wow.
Yet, if you look at all the recordings of him playing live, as soon as Polytone amps appeared, he got one.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can be louder. And
I can hear myself.
I can hear myself, and everybody can hear myself, and I can conduct the band by just playing louder. He started doing that, same with metal strings. For me personally, I started on metal strings on Blue Tomastic back in the day. Amazingly, we had access to it because Bolshoi Theater Orchestra, they were getting it, the government was getting that for them. Strings and rosin, and so those guys were sharing it, of course, maybe for a little bit of money.
Yeah.
It was so little that you couldn't even consider that stealing. So through my teacher, I had access to Tomastic strings.
Right.
And since I'm playing, half of my time I'm playing electric bass, I think it's a nice cross between metal and gut strings sound wonderful. I just have, I would say, 3 issues with gut and, metal around gut or synthetic. First of all, they're soft, and when you play it, before you can do anything, it twists.
Yeah.
It twists around under your finger. I don't like that feeling. I like it more sturdy. Second, it's very hard to keep in tune when you're playing with a bow. I think Paul Chambers was just true giant with that, you know.
Yeah.
Another issue is that I noticed, and you know, it's a very honorable thing. Many bass players in New York, when I came, I realized they trying to sound like 50s and 60s, like those guys, and I completely respect that. It's not for me, but what I did notice is that when we play, typically in the band, the sound is really here. If you play here, it's a different set and lesser set of harmonics. It's a different sound. So when you have gut strings set up here, your body naturally tends to make you play up here, which was I was doing last night because I had a gut string bass with set up like this. So
wow.
I was playing like this all night, you know, just to be able to play.
Just to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my thing with the strings, and I played domestics for many years. Vikes were on Mingus's bass when I got it.
Okay, wow.
I tried to ask them for any kind of help, and they said that they were not interested. And that was around the time when the Dario started making multiple sets. And I looked at it, just at the price. Domestic Vikes, $297. The Dario Pizzicata Light Tension, $127.
Yeah.
So I'm playing the Darios now for the last 10 or so years.
I didn't know that. Oh, I think they're wonderful strings. I love the Darios, and I love Spycore as well. And yeah, we're lucky that there's so much to go at. And in terms of Charles Mingus's music, so you play with the big band, Dynasty, all the repertory bands, showcasing the wonderful music of this giant composer and bass player. Is there any particular bass parts that you really enjoy playing?
Sure, you know, it's interesting. Well, Mingus himself always says, and we proclaim that from the stage, that he used to get mad at people when they were trying to sound like somebody else. He said always, like sometimes angrily, like, play yourself. So I knew that instantly when I got into in the band that if I was trying to imitate Mingus in any kind of way, that I might be struck by the lightning bolt or something like that. So I felt like I was free, I was released from something. Like I literally can play myself. I play the lines I want, and if they sound more, for lack of better description, more like Ron Carter than Charles Mingus, that's okay, because it's, you know, it's still coming from my system. But certain things, of course, I had to learn, and the certain arrangements that, you know, like you have to play the melody to So Long Eric. Kind of like Mingus. With this.
That gliss, yeah.
I might even play the first 3 notes of the walking bass line like this, you know. So this is the prescription. Everything else, and we're just using his idea. He didn't like things to stay in the same place. So we're just using his idea of whatever. Sometimes I might turn to Donald, the drummer, and I would say, give it to the piano when the new solo starts, like just bone and piano, for example. Communicate. Yes, okay. We'll leave it there, and then we just look at each other. When do we come back? The other day, we were playing Don't Let It Happen Here, which has German pastor lyrics about very, very deep and dark. Like, they came and took the communists, and I said nothing because I was not a communist. They came and took unionists, and I said nothing. And then they came and took me, for I was guilty as they were for not speaking out and saying that all people have right to freedom. And the tuba starts playing this, which I joined. So typically there's one solo on that to be concise and powerful, but we also have a rule, kind of like spoken rule that everybody has to be featured in the set. And if I don't get featured, I don't care. But all the solos, they have to be really featured. So okay, we had 2 more solos. So we had to, and one of them solos was brilliant jazz message trombonist, Robin Eubanks, with whom I'm on 2 of his records, which I'm really happy about the music. So he stands up, and I know that he likes it, and he has deep experience with compound rhythms because he was in Dave Holland's band from 1986 until the quintet disbanded. So he's deeply into it. So I again consulted my drummer, and instead of this, we went into it. And it took, 2.5 seconds for Robin to realize where it is. And he went completely into like putting 5/7 and stuff like that. So I think, although Mingus did not do that, but in my mind, that's a like Mingus way, modern approach to implement his ideas. He liked things to jump around. Another part of, like, you just have to learn parts, because some of it is really, really hard. Like, there's a piece called Pinky. It's part of Epitaph, one of the movements from 3-hour-long Epitaph. There's a 28 bar. It's in this tempo, but it gets to orchestral part, and tuba and bass play this. Breaking all the rules. The only way to play it is to put the thumb on F.
Right, okay, yeah. Yeah.
On the piece called Royal Suite, which is extended work written for Roy Eldridge, also there's some parts where he goes into this kind of like, ostinato movement. And the other one. And it goes for 36 bars. So I had to work on that because it's not...
Yeah, that's not something that comes easily, I guess.
It's not the end of the world, but when you do other things before and after, I had to prepare myself for that. And especially if it's bass de jour.
Oh, yeah.
And then like...
And those kind of Mingus sounds, like I think about, the names escape me, but there's a minor blues where it's really glissando at the start. It's like, I've got it written down here. Is it?
Are you thinking of?
Or is it it's some kind of a blues anyway?
East flat, As flat 2?
It's got this really crazy kind of...
the intro is this.
Yeah.
I, thinking of this, I kind of like, okay, I'll play these notes, but I'll play it in my own kind of way. So maybe I'll do something.
Right, okay.
But he did this, but we tend to play it faster now. It's natural for like, even if you go and see Weather Report, they played Birdland in one tempo in 1974.
Oh, yeah.
And a different tempo in 1986.
Yeah.
So we, guys in the band and gals in the band, they like it fast.
Right, okay.
So I'm thinking like, okay, I can do that, but I don't want to, I think this is more character in this tempo.
Yeah.
So that's my approach to Mingus, like verbatim lines that I have to play. A lot of them, like I say, you just have to learn.
Because there's things like, some are really agile. I mean, there's so much is really cooking up-tempo stuff, but things like Jump Monk, and it has got that kind of like lots of sort of tricky eighth notes at the beginning. It has to be rhythmically really sharp to set up the band.
Well, I just walked through this, but I recorded my own version of Moan and Sled Jump Monk, because it's the same set of changes.
Okay.
With electric band at aforementioned Mike Sim studio in Brooklyn.
Okay.
With Mike Sim and Seamus Blake on tenor saxophones. and Gene Jackson and Jonathan Blake on drums. 2 drums, 2 saxophones, and electric bass. And I learned part of the bridge of the melody to John Punk on electric bass. So I'm using that in the band now.
Yeah.
I don't even know exact notes, I don't remember them. But that motion, because many things, especially those high tempos that Mingus wrote, he didn't mean for every note to be, you know, put out, performed. It's more like a motion thing.
Yeah.
And then I keep working, you know, further.
A lot of the times it's like a gesture, isn't it?
It's a gesture, exactly. Or like Moanin', he didn't do it on the song Moanin', but that opening line that baritone plays, right?
Yeah.
I play it on the last A because there are 4 A's, the B, and then last A that comes after that. And, you know, we spontaneous composers, or not so spontaneous in this case, because, you know, I had a chance to play it 400 times, if not more. But I come to realize that on the last A, if I stop working, if I just do this like, then I keep working, then it really works, you know, in spots like that. Mingus didn't do it, but I think it's kind of like Mingusian in its own way, you know,
Yeah.
that approach.
That'd be a great name for an album, Mingusian. I know, I love that, and I love the way that you take, you know, you have to interpret his music. You can't, as you said earlier, you know, you are you. And there's all those, I'm thinking about the other kind of little quirks that he had, and one of them is pulling the string off the side of the fingerboard. That, yeah, like,
Once in a while I do it just for like adding character to something, but more often I don't do it than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, he had this, he played tense with the bow like this.
Oh, the upside down.
Upside
yeah,
down.
like that. Yeah, I see.
He played, you can find it, I found it twice and I stupidly did not bookmark it. Sue showed it to me when she was alive. He plays I Can't Get Started with 2 hands like this.
Oh wow.
Like, yeah,
Okay.
he literally plucks.
I see, like pinched kind of thing. Yeah. Wow.
And he plays the melody here.
Wow.
I cannot do it, but so he had ideas, and those ideas sometimes, like in again part of Epitaph, Children's Hour of Dream, for example, they're very particular bass parts, and some of them are, like the other day I was playing that Lawrence Dixon bass at
Monty Scott's.
yeah, and it's big, and I had trouble with this line. I started getting, so I would be looking at Earl McIntyre because he plays the same bass line. And at the time where I see that, I mean, he can do circular breathing. That's part of his, you know, thing. But I see when he would take a breath quickly, I really apply myself to that line. When he's playing it, I might scale back just so my hands are in.
Choose your battles.
You choose your battles exactly, especially on somebody else's bass and a big bass.
I think it's incredible what you're doing, and I love the fact that you're out there promoting music of this, you know, legendary composer and bass player, and somebody who's had an impact on, you know, the whole musical world forever. But you also sound like yourself, Boris, and I you know, I've really enjoyed digging into your music again.
Give me another 10 years.
Yeah, that's what we all think. I mean, how about going forward for you? What's, you know, do you have any projects that you're working on about your music, maybe away from the Mingus Band? Is there stuff, more solo releases? I mean, your last one was in 2017 or something, right? I'm thinking.
No, 2022.
2022, okay, yeah. So what's on the horizon for you?
I have one in the can, which I'm with the Positone Records, run by Mark Free.
Okay.
He's a very interesting guy, and he likes the model of kind of like old Blue Note. He likes to have a house band.
Okay.
And that's very lucky for us, and maybe not so lucky for the artists who want to record what they own, but they can't. But that's his approach.
It's very cool.
And that approach also puts me on between 10 and 20 releases a year, so you're always hovering somewhere. He recorded that one at the tail end of the pandemic, and it came in 22, and he called it First Things First. Then he wanted to record, he's a very straight ahead, or perceived as a straight ahead label. But then he says, look, he let me record some electric on that record.
Okay.
And then he says, look, everybody sees you with upright, very few people know you're electric playing. I don't know how true that is, but okay, I trust you. He said, why don't you make all electric recording? And we went into the Michael Brecker acoustic studio. Art Hirahara had 6 synthesizers that there were not even enough channels for everything, because it's a 48 channel studio. So he wired half of the synth channels through his Kronos. And Paul Baumbeck was playing guitar, one of my favorite guitarists. We just did a duo for Steeplechase.
Oh, wonderful.
With Upright.
Oh, I like that.
So it's in the can now for over a year, but I'm not worried about it, because I still have to do a few little parts with the fretless and maybe synth, and he lets me do anything.
Well, I'm a big fan of First Things First, and it's interesting because that starts with page 1, and that starts with a bowed introduction to the whole thing, and then you introduce the band, and your acoustic music is beautiful. And I recommend for people watching at home to start there. And I'm also going to be really digging out your solo recording, which is way back. Was that in the 90s, the Double Standard?
I think I started thinking, but I tell you, I'll be honest, I was completely inspired by other solo recordings.
Oh yeah, which ones?
In particular, Dave Holland in '92 came with Once All, it's called, all standards, mostly standard. And he had another one which I kind of like dug out on ECM called Emerald Tears.
Yeah, that's a beautiful record.
And then I had a tape of Miroslav Atlantic Suite. So those two really, really kind of like, you know how sometimes you listening to something and you get jealous. That was not the case. I got jealous when I was 19 and listening to Scott LaFera. That's when I got jealous. I included one of his tunes on the solo record. Yeah, I need to spend some time to be in tune with this. So stuff like that. One of the first I would say bass solos I transcribed was Nardis.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah.
If you really dissect it, it's mostly white keys of the piano.
Yeah.
It's like C major.
Yeah.
Almost all the way. Harmonic discoveries, you know. So I was jealous of Scott LaFera when I was at that age. I wanted to play like that. By the time in the 90s I heard Atlantic Suite and Dave Holland, I wasn't jealous at all. I was inspired. Like, man, let me think about it.
You were ready to say your
Yeah.
piece.
And then in the process of preparing for the solo recording, because you know you have to learn double stops and chords and strategies, how to develop the piece and how to pace yourself, because it's easy to play, you know, inner urge one time through the melody, but then if you're tired, what do you do after that?
Yeah.
So you have to develop strategies, you know. And in the process of getting ready for this recording, I realized, like, man, I'm kind of growing instrumentally and compositionally. So it was a very, like, how would I say, the process that really pulls you in to the point when we were in Japan and people started banging on the wall because I realized that I was trying to record a piece at 2 a.m. I was sawing. I just forgot what time it was.
Yeah.
And I apologize, of course. And it was on tour with the great saxophonist Lou Tabakin, in whose trio I've been playing for over 30 years. And he still remembers. He says, like, "Man, you were nuts back then, like, playing any second, like just trying to prepare for that recording and piece by piece, you know." And it was a very interesting process and very involved. Like right now, if I had to play a solo concert, I would need at least 2 weeks to put it all back together and again apply the same strategy to everything, because if you don't do it every day, you naturally lose it.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful document to where you were there as an artist, and you know, your recent recordings, you know, likewise are doing the same thing. So I'm going to really look forward to checking out your electric bass stuff. Just to finish off, where can people find you online? Where will they be able to connect with your music and find your recordings? Have you got any places to point people towards? I mean, obviously your work with the Mingus Big Band and Mingus Dynasty.
And I would say that I have kind of like, you know, well-developed relationships which are absolute joy to rekindle every week or every other week. Say like, you know, the saxophonist Lou Tabakin or Robbie Newbanks, the trombonist, or played with them for years. And there was a drummer, Victor Jones, recently kind of like restarted the musical relationship. Or Peter Brainan, a saxophonist with whom I played for 30 years in all of the Latin bands.
Yeah.
And he's like a typical New Yorker. He mixes all things up. But I'm also very, very happy that young people call me. And I feel grateful because, you know, we can exchange that, you know, young energy and experience together. And there's some wonderful, wonderful people in New York who call me. And some of it is because I kind of like see them in the Mingus Band and we connect. And some of them it's through the Positone label, like this trombone player who got all sorts of accolades now, Alton Sinclair. He was the last trombonist of Dave Sanborn.
Wow, okay.
And he just turned 30.
Okay, oh wow.
And he teaches like San Francisco Jazz Collective and a lot of places. So he calls me for gigs and we have very fruitful musical relationship.
That's wonderful.
Saxophone player Sam Dillon.
Oh yeah.
Who's very much like in approach to the music and stylistically he reminds me of Michael Brecker a lot. And I kind of dig that.
Who wouldn't? That sounds great.
I like it, yeah.
Well, it's been fantastic to connect with you, Boris, while you're over here, and I'm looking forward to checking out your concert this evening. And yeah, on behalf of everyone here and everyone watching at home, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, guys.
It's been a real pleasure.